World Cup, which saw its climax in 1986, was the 13th organised by FIFA, and for a time it seemed cursed with the ill fortune that the superstitious expect. Colombia, the original choice as hosts, eventually had to decline the honour. Mexico, which staged that wonderful World Cup in 1970, stepped into the breach, even though the country suffered devastating earthquakes prior to the competition. FIFA stuck to the system of 24 participants, first used 4 years earlier in Spain, though they organised the teams in a different manner. A new knockout phase would involve 16 survivors from the first round of 6 groups with 4 teams each. Despite all the difficulties, the 1986 World Cup was worthy of the game's grandest occasion. No European nation had won the World Cup on South or Central American soil. Italy had the pedigree to change that. In 1970, also in Mexico, they'd reached the final, losing to Brazil. In 1986, they returned as holders of the trophy, their squad including several of the stars of 1982, like Alessandro Altobelli, a scorer in that final against West Germany. Italy were drawn in this group, along with the 1978 winners Argentina, Bulgaria and South Korea. Italy, you may recall, had suffered at the hands of North Korea in the World Cup of '66 in England. This group centred on the capital, Mexico City, and the month-long extravaganza of football entertainment started where the competition would finish, the Azteca Stadium. Italy against Bulgaria, the opening game. Opening matches rarely live up to all the hype. At least this one produced some goals, which is more than a string of such games did in the 60s and 70s. Originally, the host nation had set the World Cup ball rolling, but after the previous World Cup here in Mexico, it had been decided that the holders should have the honour instead. Once the dancers and speeches had been seen and heard, Altobelli picked up where he left off in 1982. Italy, to their own cost, wasted 3 other equally good chances. Nasco Sirko made them pay the penalty with a late equaliser. He set off on a personal lap of honour, while replays of the goal from every possible angle were beamed around the world. Diego Maradona was under even greater pressure than he had been as a raw 21-year-old in Spain 4 years earlier. Then he was a wonder boy. His failure to handle the pressure was understandable. Now he was at the peak of his career, acknowledged worldwide as the game's finest player as well as the richest. Yet he had next to nothing to boast of in terms of international achievement. Argentina had a new manager. Cesar Menotti had handed over the reins to Carlos Bilardo. In Mexico City's Olympic Stadium, Bilardo's men quickly got down to business against the South Korean side, competing at the finals for the first time. Jorge Valdano had played most of his football in Spain. He was the attacking threat with his skill and his height. Argentina's 3-1 victory owed everything to Maradona. The South Koreans tried to stop him any way they could. Maradona took his revenge in the best possible way, not by kicking back, but by carving the Korean defence wide open time after time. Maradona created Argentina's first 2 goals with free kicks, and their third with a far post cross. The Koreans were delighted when they scored one late lone goal of their own. A fine... The clash of the 1978 and 1982 World Cup winners finished almost diplomatically all square. Argentina looked the more impressive, even though they also conceded the opening goal. A 25,000 crowd in Puebla saw Italy take the lead after 6 minutes. The Dutch referee Jan Keizer awarded a penalty for handball by Oscar Gare. Altobelli struck his second goal of the finals. Argentina had protested long and loud after the penalty award, but impressively and ominously, they refused to let it upset their concentration and set about pursuing an equaliser. Italy had set Fernando Di Napoli, a raw recruit to international football, In the second half, Italy's Bruno Conti hit the woodwork, but neither side deserved both points. Tempers deteriorated in the later stages. Both teams and 45,000 fans earned top marks for effort in a Mexico City downpour, which made much of this match a lottery. South Korea altered their approach. Their match against Argentina had been an exercise in damage limitation. This time the Koreans fancied their chances. Suffered an early setback when Klarman Getov, goal-scoring hero in the qualifying competition, took advantage of a defensive mistake. South Korea refused to take this lying down. They forced several fine saves out of Bulgarian goalkeeper Borislav Mikhailov before equalising midway through the second half. The very name Korea strikes terror into the heart of Italian football. The Italians' defeat by North Korea in the 1966 World Cup finals remains the symbol of ultimate football humiliation. That game had been a decisive one at the end of a first-round group. Now Italy met South Korea under the same pressure. Italian nerves were jangling. After two matches, they had yet to win. Altobelli was again the key man, even though he missed the first half penalty. Then he scored twice to inspire relief in the Italians. Their margin of victory eventually 3-2, but the Koreans provided the best goal of the game. Bruno Conti had been many people's outstanding player when Italy won the World Cup in Spain. In 4 years, he appeared to have lost nothing in pace and skill. As ever, he was still to be found where he could do the most damage on behalf of veteran manager Enzo Bearzot. Italy also collected one gift goal courtesy of South Korea's defence following a raid launched down the right by Fernando Di Napoli. South Korea contributed hugely to the entertainment in Puebla, and many Italians were wondering whether the trauma of 1966 might reappear. The closing minutes brought a rapid exchange of goals, Hu Jung-moo pulling one back for the Koreans. But when the American referee Socha blew his final whistle, Italy had not only recorded their first victory, but exorcised a Korean ghost. Argentina won easily in the Olympic Stadium to top the group. This was a match in which it became clear that Argentina were no one Maradona band. Valdano's instinct for open spaces and for goals was matched by the selfless, creative work of Jorge Burruchaga in midfield, the defensive resolution of Jose Luis Brown. Bulgaria seemed to be content to keep the score down. That way they might just squeeze into the second round for the first time in their history. They sent out a team with 7 midfielders and not one established striker. Created not one serious goal attempt and got what they deserved. Maradona, of course, also played his expected part. As expected, Argentina and Italy emerged as the major forces in the group. Both unbeaten, Argentina on top with 5 points to Italy's 4. South Korea offered some splendid skill, highlighted by Choi's spectacular goal against Italy. Bulgaria's approach much more negative, and they were fortunate to progress as one of the third-place teams with 2 points and a respectable goal difference. What would home advantage mean for Mexico in the second group? No problems with the altitude in Mexico City. No country had ever been more thoroughly prepared. The players have been together for a year under their coach from Yugoslavia, Bora Milutinovic. The draw had been kind for Mexico. Belgium, under the wise management of Vitesse, were strong candidates to qualify as well. Paraguay were painted as the outsiders in the group, and Iraq expected to be the weakest of the 24 countries involved in the competition. Mexico's first match, on paper their hardest, against Belgium. Belgium had bitter memories of their World Cup duel with Mexico in the 1970 finals. They lost on that occasion amid refereeing controversy, and they lost this one too. Mexico exerted all the early pressure, and the Belgian defence wilted. Thomas Boy was running the midfield and created the Mexicans' 2 first-half goals, both from set pieces. Itself had been prize enough. They knew they'd been beaten by the greatest player on earth. Diego Maradona just missed out on Argentina's World Cup success of 1978. Already an international at 17, he was felt just too young to make the final selection of 22. Against Belgium, he made sure that he would play in the final of 1986. For France, it might have been different if goalkeeper Batz had kept out Andy Bremer's dipping shot. After that, the organisation of the Germans stifled the French flair. So for France, the only consolation, the match for third place against Belgium. 4 years earlier, they'd been beaten by Poland at this stage. But now they put on a brilliant show in a magnificent game in Puebla, with both sides fully committed to attack. France had finished third before in 1958, when Just Fontaine created the World Cup scoring record he still holds, 13 goals in the finals. France made 6 changes from their semi-final side, while the Belgian team was more along the lines of that which had gone down to Argentina. The entertainment, which was considerable in Puebla, continued into extra time. France were without 5 of their star names. Injuries and fatigue had caught up with Batz, Bossis, Gires, Platini and Rocheteau. Belgium, by contrast, had virtually a full-strength side on duty in Puebla. That may have been more of a handicap than a virtue. Despite taking an early lead through Jan Kellermans, World Cup battle fatigue ultimately proved their undoing. It was 28 years since France had finished third in the World Cup. Everything they had achieved since the halcyon days of Raymond Kopa and Just Fontaine had always been compared with that era. Not any longer. French football now had a new point of reference. Jean-Marc Ferreri, once nicknamed the new Platini, equalised for France. Jean-Pierre Papin had put them into the lead before half-time. Nico Claessen's equaliser for Belgium after 72 minutes sent his teammates into extra time for the 3rd time in 4 games. The challenge was to prove too much. France pulled away again. Gengini scored in an undignified but ultimately rewarding goalmouth scramble. Finally, Manuel Amoros, having been brought down by Jerez, jumped up to convert the penalty himself. The champions of Europe finished 3rd in the world. Extra time was too much for Belgium. The third time for them in 4 matches in 13 days. They'd had to play the extra half an hour. So third place for France, fourth for Belgium. Argentina were unchanged. The same team which had been too good for Belgium. The same 11 which had knocked out England in the quarter-finals. Beckenbauer brought back Thomas Berthold after suspension. He'd been sent off against Mexico, and gave Lothar Matthäus the task of dogging Maradona's footsteps. Argentina have been over the years one of the great football exporters. Thousands of players have preached their gospel of technical arrogance around the world since the big Italian clubs first swooped for them in the wake of the 1930 World Cup, when Argentina were runners-up. 4 members of Argentina's lineup in the Estadio Azteca were with foreign clubs. 4 more signed contracts soon after the final whistle. The conveyor belt, it seems, will never stop. Beckenbauer set. The Germans appeared overawed by the occasion for the first hour of the action. They woke up to find themselves 2 goals down, and then, and only then, applied themselves to attacking Argentina. With 17 minutes to go, Rummenigge made up 1 goal. Suddenly, West Germany saw a chink of light. Argentina were vulnerable after all. Another corner on the left. Brazilian referee Romualdo Arpifilho showed Enrique the yellow card for time wasting. When the corner curled into the danger zone, Argentina's defence was again found wanting. Bremer's no goals for Maradona this time, leaving Gary Lineker as the top scorer in the finals with 6. But the trophy itself, ample consolation for the captain. Maradona's genius may have been flawed by his notorious goal against England, but there was no doubt that the World Cup of 1986 was presented into the hands of the world's greatest player.